Good morning, everyone. I'm your host of The Faces, Entrepreneurs Are People, Cody Hall, also CEO of virtual staffing company Telehelping. I'm here today with Chad Holmes, Formula Wealth, and he's going to be able to chat with us about that balance between people, work, entrepreneurs, and life. Thank you for joining me, Chad.
Cody, thank you for having me.
No, I'm excited for it. Like I say to you beforehand, I say to everyone, I can't introduce you better than yourself, so I'll outsource that introduction to you. So take a moment. Let's tell us who we're talking to today.
Chad Holmes down here in Fairhope, Alabama, married to a breast cancer surgeon, and we've got two little girls, 4.5, 1.5. And I am a business owner of a very small wealth management firm. I work out of my house, and I get to play a very fun role of daddy daycare and wealth management, retirement planning, and it's a tightrope to walk, but trying to keep priorities in order, understanding that I'm dealing with very serious issues with my clients' money, but my wife, in retrospect, is dealing with their life, and then also we're trying to have fun with the girls, and it's when do you turn it off? When do you say, all right, done checking emails? When can we say, there's a prospecting opportunity or a marketing thing or a video I want to wrap up and get on YouTube, but at the same time, the girls are being so cute right now, or they're not being cute, and my wife really needs my help, and it's that time of night. So we're kind of all over the place, and honestly, I'm struggling, wanting to do all of it. It's hard to pick and choose. I have to constantly remind myself, you went solo so that you can enjoy this family time. That was the main reason that I branched out and left a large wealth management firm where I was super happy. Loved that team back there in Texas, but we moved, and I decided not to join another team and just do this myself because our first daughter was born, and I really just wanted to be here for all of it. And so it's fun. We're doing a lot, and we just moved here from Montgomery, so Fairhope has been a good new chapter to us. 4-year-olds in daycare, but the baby's not, and so we're lately I've been working just naps and nights and weekends, but trying to juggle it. And we finally got a nanny when we moved here last month, and so I'm starting to work more and have controlled hours, but I'm still taking the older one to daycare, and so I'm still getting to ask about her day when it's fresh off her mind from coming home from daycare, and it's really fun. I grew up with 2 CPAs as parents, and so there'd be busy season and stuff, but they never wanted work to get in the way with our family either. We had dedicated family game nights, and my dad would always have an arrangement with his company that he was my coach for whatever sport I was playing, and so he was there for 2 practices a week and the game.
Wow.
And so always there. He was dedicated, intentional time set aside for family, and I wanted to carry that on because it's so wonderful, really.
I'm feeling your struggle right now. I have another baby coming in May. Very excited for that. The 2-year-old I do have right now could be his own little army, though.
Yeah.
And so we're back in the States right now. I'm out of Napa at the current moment, and enjoying my place up here and the weather. But the only problem is my wife, I see it in her eyes. She misses our nanny, right? I was telling her yesterday, I was like, hey, listen, so do we want to hire a nanny so that you can have some part of your day that's not our son's play toy? And so, I completely understand. And, you touched on something there, and you left a big firm and got on your own for your own time, right? I hear that time and time again at Telehelping. And then what it resonates is because I myself was like, I'm going to get into my own business after being the CEO of someone else's company. And I'm like, I'm going to make my own hours. What turns out when you make your own hours, it's all the hours.
Yeah.
No one tells you that. No one says like, hey, listen, you can work for yourself. Yourself is kind of a bad boss, right?
You can't clock out.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't give me any breaks. Right. And sometimes, for the first year and a half of telehelping, I didn't pay myself. And so my boss was a cheapskate, right? Never gave me the week free labor, right? Just taking advantage of me. So, when you got off on your own, to talk to me about like that moment you realize you're like, huh, I don't think I'm going to have as much time as I thought I was going to have. Like, tell me about that. How far were you into the journey?
So my daughter was born the day we had my last day of work at the previous job, and she was 10 days early. I was supposed to have like 10-day break between work, and then finally getting everything ready for the baby, and she came early, and I left my exit interview, and my wife was like, "We're going to the hospital right now." And so next few months were just total chaos. We moved across the country. It was COVID, so we moved to an apartment that we never even seen, and we moved to a place where we didn't know anybody. I'm locked in the house with a brand new baby, no experience with babies, and my wife's in fellowship training, so she's finalizing her training for medical stuff, and I'm like, okay, I guess. So flying blind is an understatement. We were up there, and we didn't want to hire a nanny. We didn't want anybody in the house because it was 2020. It was just really scary, and we don't know how that affects babies, and it's just horrible stuff. So I really did that first year only get to work during naps and then nights and weekends. And what I ended up doing, because I find myself wanting, as an entrepreneur, at least in my industry, wealth management, when you go solo, a lot of times you underprice yourself because you don't have the confidence, you don't have the big network that you had before. And so I was working for very little money, and that made people want to come work with me. I had a lot of inflow in those early years because I was so cheap. So why not? But I couldn't work during those hours that I set for myself. So my wife and I made an arrangement, and 3 days a week, I stayed up until 2 a.m. working, not doing client meetings, of course, but doing everything else I could. And then I'd go to bed, and I'd be a zombie the next day, but that was fine because I was just hanging out with the baby. And I did that for the better part of that year, just to do the admin stuff in the background and the marketing and the books of everything we got to do for the business. And what turned out was my wife is finishing up her fellowship, and we're ready to move to Alabama. She said, "Hey, I'm done with you doing these late nights. Like, we gotta, we have to be intentional about our marriage too. It's not just the baby." And so, and absolutely right. And so, stopped that, and baby started getting you better, more predictable sleep schedule once she got a little older. And so, but I was still very limited in what I was doing. And then I found myself just completely burnt out on low cost, short-term engagements with people that, don't meet your typical minimums that financial advisors usually have. And so I was just totally burnt out, and I realized I got to do something to change. I need to slow the inflow of new people coming in. And I don't want to do short-term engagements anymore, because that turnover, meeting somebody and finding out all this intimate stuff about them, and then them leaving when the short-term engagement's over, high five, that's wasted knowledge and time. And I can't do anything with that knowledge anymore. So I decided I really just want to work with longer term engagements, and I increased my fees a lot to slow down the client flow. And it really did, almost to the point where I was like, I overcorrected. People aren't coming in. And so then you got to find the balance of, okay, well, how many people can I handle coming in a year? And at what point do I need to set my prices? And so figuring all this out as an entrepreneur, knowing that I don't have 8 to 5 to be able to enjoy what I do. Not that I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, I just can't enjoy the work aspect only for 40 hours a week. And I'm still part-time, even with a nanny. But it's really great to be flexible. Anything that comes up with the girls, or with extracurricular stuff, I'm there for it all. And I know when you talk to the elderly, they're like, don't miss out on all this stuff. And it's like, okay, I'm going to say that I was there for all of it. So that I know in the future, I'll be thanking myself for these crazy, weird hours. And is it the male DNA, or is it just me, or what I was brought up with? But it hurts me to know that I'm not, the breadwinner, or at least earning what I used to earn. And I miss that. And I really have a calling to financially help provide for the family. Now you're married to a surgeon, your family's going to be okay, but I still want to do that. I still like earning money and feeling valuable, or valued. not my wife values me a lot. I'm talking about for my clients.
Of course.
And I really enjoy helping the families that I serve. And it's just, where do you draw the line of I need to keep earning, but I also really want to prioritize the family? And that's a literally
Yeah.
daily discussion I have with myself of, all right, you got to turn it off. It's time to go be a dad or a husband.
No, I mean, Chad, some really sage things there. And, you know, I never thought I'd be in the same challenge as you, to be honest with you. I never thought I was going to have kids. And so when I did, and I realized I was having a child, I was raised by my grandmother, so I didn't have the same, the parental, nuclear family upbringing. And so I was like, wow, I really am carrying a lot of weight here to break the cycle, right? To step in here and have a nuclear family to raise my kids with a mom and a dad every day. And so I was about 7 months. That was about 7 months out that I found out I was having a child before I ended up resigning as CEO because I felt myself just not caring all that much. I started thinking about like, well, I got this human that's going to rely on me. I'm starting to create my own people, right? And like, what does this mean for me? What's this mean for? Because right before I was working 18+ hour days, right, trying to, you know, chase that at that point an arbitrary number of 100 million. I'm like, if I could, grow up really poor, if I could just have $100 million, I don't think I'll have one problem in the world. It was like that was my thought, as simple as that may be. And then I don't really care too much. I don't really have that thought process because you're talking about like I don't want to miss those moments, right? And I took a year off, like a nothing. It was just
Wow.
me and my boy. And I was a dad every day. I called myself a stay-at-home yoga dad, though I did about 4 yoga classes, right? So I was a yoga dad.
Yeah.
But it was no regrets, and like at all. And then the hardest part for me, and I'm sure for you, was like start getting busier, right? And you're like, oh, but I really like hanging out with him. Oh, but I need to get back in this professional world. But I really like hanging out with him. And that for me was, when I took over a legacy company that was a call center business that I ended up not once I took over as board member CEO due to an illness cancer that someone who started the company was going with. It was under a different name. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to redo this my way if I'm going to be in charge. And so I sold off a lot of the call centers, rebranded as virtual, took off from a different angle, right? And one of the biggest things I started realizing about that same time, like you, is I'm going to get other people to do my jobs. So I started outsourcing my own responsibilities in an outsourcing company, right? Because I was like, because I was like, oh, I could send 500 messages on LinkedIn today, but how much time is that going to take? I got 4 sales calls. Who's going to do those? And then we'll be up till midnight, up at 5 a.m. So I felt the same thing with you. It was a heart tug of war, right? I got to provide, right? For me, I'm a single income family, and so my wife works. She runs her restaurants, but she has a general manager, right? And if she sees me do this signal here on this video, I want to retract that real quick. I want to retract that real quick. That was an inappropriate use of the air quotes. You do work. She does work, but
I'm sorry.
My bad. But no, she has a general manager now, and so. But we got a general manager because we realized, like you and your wife did. Like, whoa. We're married here still. You got your fellowship. I'm starting this. I've got a child, but also we're the core unit of this family, right? And if that erodes, right, really, what else matters, right?
Right.
And so, like, it just fall apart on you.
Yeah, I would say, anybody struggling with when can I work? I got the baby, whatever. One of the things that I found mindset that best helped me was, especially before the nanny came, and I'd get maybe a 2-hour nap to work, and it was an unpredictable 2 hours a day. During that 2 hours, I only would allow myself to only do the things that I can only do when she's sleeping. So don't have lunch when the baby's sleeping. Like, you can do that with the baby. Don't read a summary email or something when the baby's sleeping. You can do that with the baby. There are certain things that You don't want to ignore the baby. That's not what I'm talking about. But just, kind of in the background, whatever. Push her
Mhm.
on the swing and read an email. And
Correct.
but when the baby's down, don't do anything except for what must be done when only, it's just you by yourself. And so by locking that in and planning my day accordingly, I would knock out tasks before the nap and after the nap that could be a little flexible, and then hit the hardcore stuff and only the hardcore stuff during nap time.
No, I mean, that's a really big thing. So my wife, for example, um, I'm involved. I like finance, which you appreciate as a finance guy. I'm a numbers guy as well. And so I'm involved in my wife's financial reviews of her restaurants. And one thing I was like, hey, listen, I told the accountant, I'm like, schedule the call for 11 a.m. on Friday because that's when the baby will be asleep, right? Because neither one of us can watch it at the same time. And we both can't be talking about a P&L, right? And so I like it was scheduled for nap time. But you highlight the elements of how things can clash, right? And the challenges that working through them while starting a company. Has there ever been like a time where they kind of are, they support each other, where you find that the business and the challenges you face there are parallel to the ones in the family, or the ones in the business, like, oh, this is going really well, so it's really helping out with the family side. Has there, or does it always clash?
There's not a ton of overlap with as young as our girls are, and what I'm doing with, you know, business stuff. I may be in a better mood, which would be, if things are going well, I get a new big client or something, I may just be on fire for the weekend or
Yeah.
whatever time period, and just, yeah, let's go do this and that. And I can't sleep anyway, so let me just go, just have a blast with the kids and wife. But, there's not just a ton of mix and match going on with what I'm doing, where I wouldn't say in my particular instance that there's those cross.
Well, you said something though, and as like I said to you in our pre-meeting, I day trade, and then of course telehelping is my main world with all of our clients, and my wife can tell when I have a good day, right? She knows when I'm having issues with a client. She knows when the market didn't go well, and she knows when they did, right? Um, and I think that's something worth stopping on and parking and having a conversation about is we are in so many ways one emotionally with our business, right? Like telehelping is me. So when things aren't going well with telehelping, right, it pays for our life. So breathe, right? It's hard to park that at 5 p.m. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna take this worry here and I'm gonna put it on here, and it'll be here tomorrow morning. Then I'm gonna go look at my son and run around my mortgage that I owe, so I can enjoy my afternoon. Tell me about that. Like, how do you navigate that? Because I know it's difficult for me.
I would say my wife is really good one at that. So she's going to be telling some young woman that, hey, you've got stage 4 breast cancer, and hold her in her arms while she's crying. And then she's got to come home and pretend like everything's okay. And she does that stuff all the time, and it still gets to her, as it should, because she's a human. But she's really good at coming home and compartmentalizing, I think is the word she uses. I lock that emotionally charged day, the sad stuff, the heavy stuff. I lock it in the part of my brain that's just work, and I really don't try to bring it out at home. For me, I don't have the clients I serve, we're not, as much into the day trading, for example. We, longer term investments, very passive approach to investing. So it's not going to have all of the uh, roller coaster ride of the market, but more of the step back. And yeah, we'll have some up years and some down times. But so my job, I have a baseline where pretty much everything's good, and then I have super exciting when something new is happening. I'm fortunate enough to serve very I don't say boring, but vanilla family situations where nothing's too crazy. We're long-term investing. We're just planning and, doing tax strategies. There's busy times like year end or tax filing or things like that. But, the fun strategies I get to bring in that I get excited about, but I just, because I'm working for myself and I'm not serving jerks, which I have in the past when I was an employee. There was one, client that I just get a knot in my stomach anytime I have to talk to this person. It was not a good setup. And I told myself when I branched off, I was like, I'll never serve somebody like that. And then sure enough, somebody, a friend from an old business was like, hey, I got a prospect for you. They'd be great. Heads up, they're kind of a jerk. And I was so desperate for a big client that I was like, I don't care, I'll take it on. And fortunately, it did not work out. The guy was a total jerk, but I was angry at myself for even being willing to do it, even though my friend said, hey, this person's a jerk, but I wanted to, introduce you anyway, just in case you really wanted a new client, because he is a big client. And I was like, man, I totally caved on what I said I wanted to do in this entrepreneurial pursuit so that I could make money. The whole reason of doing the entrepreneurial pursuit was to have a balance of family and happiness and work. And I was really disappointed that I was planning to settle. And I'm just so grateful that it didn't work out based on the few interactions we had.
You're going to laugh at this. My son just ran by in his diaper.
Let's see him.
And he obviously is not participating in nap time.
I get that.
I was like, I saw him in the corner. I'm like, oh my goodness. I was trying to alert my wife. I was like, hey, I think there's a loose one on the prow. Wow. No, that's interesting you said. And wow, surgeons, right? I come up to Napa, and my place is right next to my best friend's, and he's an ED doc, right? Also a day trader, and he and I have a military background, so we both have ability to really put things away, right?
Thank you for your service.
No, I appreciate it. We just had the Marine Corps birthday. It was a fun time this past week.
Saw that.
I get to hang out with my guys at least once a year, right? Because for the most part, they all are busy too. But we talk about compartmentalizing, because when he's not in the emergency room, he does aid in dying for terminal patients. And so he's chatting me through, and I'm like, wow, I was like, I guess I got to get better. Some of the trauma things I can push down, right? Because you're like, wow, no one wants to hear about this, right? Yeah. But also, we're humans, right? We're people, right? And I also feel sometimes like I want to look at my wife and be like, oh, I'm happy. Everything's great. All things great. I didn't just lose a client. That was 20% of our business, right? And so all things are, I didn't just take on a nightmare, sell my soul. I did the same thing, right? I was like, I know I should not take this client, but it's hard to turn down this. Okay, I'm going to take this, right? So I'm going to do it. I'm going to take it. And I took it in the same way. It's like, how do I not tell her that I was wrong, right? Yeah. How do I, and so what a balance, balancing, especially small business owners, balancing the element of how am I honest with my spouse without burdening my spouse, right?
That's a powerful statement.
Right? Like, how do I share with them what I'm experiencing without having to burden them with my experience, right? And I think that's tough. And so, wow. I can only imagine. One of my good friends was a specialist for cancer as well, oncology, and he actually left the field because his heart couldn't bear every day. Because here's the thing about this: every day is the worst day. No one sees me for joy, right? I'm not
I used
there.
To be an auditor, so I get a little bit of that.
It's correct. The only thing worse than probably being a doctor for cancer is working for the IRS. And so, right, like no one likes you. But looking at it from that perspective, I think that we have to strike that balance and realize, as small entrepreneurs or even big entrepreneurs, that we have to find a filter between the two sides of us, right? Because you carry them everywhere. My brother's a good example. He owns a medium sized plumbing company. And I was visiting him recently, and he'd take a call at 8 p.m. at night, right? First thing in the morning, it's 5 a.m. And I'm like, brother, like you got to find a way to cut this off, right? You're texting, memos in bed and things like that. That only goes for so long, right? Trust me when I say, find an exit to it. And so, I think that one thing that I ended up doing to help me balance out some of that was not to bear it all. Now, because I still want to hang out as much as possible, right? I still want to be with my son as much as possible. I still farm out most of my work to make it someone else's problem, right? And so I try to be most available for the finance and the sales, overseeing the marketing of the company and executive decisions, and now podcast things, right? Because this had to happen. And so this is fun for me, right? Let someone else worry about the difficulties of recruiting. Let someone else worry about the finances, the P&Ls. I used to make my own P&Ls and everything every day, like wasted hours of my life when it probably takes the controller, a short 30 minutes to sum it all together for the initial draft, right? And so I think that's one thing that we do is, rely on, like my wife, when we first started out, like she would step in a little bit, and, you have to spread the load a little bit, because if not, you're going to carry that thing right in. Like you're going to be a pendulum. I'm at work, I'm off work. I'm at work, I'm off work.
Dude,
and you're carrying whatever momentum you have, whether it's positive or negative, you're going to keep carrying it with you.
Yeah, I think it's Carl Richards that talks about, assuming you have a valuable talent or valuable skill, if you can just focus on only doing the things that only you can do, hire out the rest of it, then the value that you bring is strictly top dollar. This is what I'm doing. And it's a waste of my time from a financial perspective for me to do something that somebody else can do for a lower cost.
100%. I think I say that in different. I originally started saying this to my wife, I believe, who enjoyed it, very loves my advice. I said, "Hey, listen, there are only things Teresa can do. All right. So when Teresa is doing Chad's job, right? All right, Chad's not doing Teresa's job, right? Chad's trying to still do Chad's job, and you're doing Chad's job with him. No one's doing Teresa's job. I said, there's only one Teresa, right? I'm like, you have all of the cooks and managers and baristas and bartenders, right? You have all these. And if I walk into a restaurant on a Sunday and I see you washing dishes, you should expect me to have my eyes roll in the back of my head going crazy, because why are you washing the dishes? Like on the busiest day of the week. And so, yeah, you have to, there's only one Chad, right? And so there are a lot of other things that Chad has to do. And I think I say it to my clients all the time. I'm like, listen, there's only one of you who can bring your specialty, your value, right? Don't waste your value, like you just said, doing something that doesn't really convey it to the client, right? Every job has a mundane task, right? But there's only one guy who can sit on here and smile and laugh and talk about his business. And that's usually, the Chads, the Codys, the Teresas, right?
Yeah. And I say that extremely hypocritical, because I still wear all the hats in my company, and like, I'm just not to the point where, I feel like I can hire anything out. And, when do you get there? When can you feel like, hey, we've got the money to hire this out, but it's not going to start for me. It's not going to start with a full-time employee, and probably need to start with a virtual assistant, and that will free me up to do the bigger things, which brings in more revenue. And then maybe we do get, full-time help or something like that. But I think it comes down to, in my head, it's coming down to, you have to put a specific dollar to your time. Right. And what do I think I'm worth versus what am I making right now? Those don't add up. I think I'm worth way up here, but because of the whole part-time gig, and I'm just now getting a nanny and just now able to work more than a couple hours a day, my income's down here. When those start to align, and then I can say, yeah, I can outsource things for cheaper. Sure, let's do it. But if that revenue's not there, I feel like you'd be getting cart in front of the horse, or maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I should just go ahead and spend every dollar on the virtual assistant, allow myself to make no money for a while, and really bring in some revenue from better marketing efforts or whatever it may be.
Well, the funny thing is, this is the only time during the call where I actually have an expert opinion, right?
Yeah,
Other than that,
outsourcing.
Other than that, I'm just a dad and a husband who has an opinion, right? I'm not an expert at those at all. Thank goodness. If I were getting paid for that job, I would probably want my money back. But that's one thing I tell people all the time is like, there's only one way to do it, but everyone does it differently. Business, the one way to do it is to have revenue and profit, right? It's like your goal is to profit, right? And how do you do that? Are you going to profit? And there's two currencies that I look at in business. There's time and there's money, right? And oftentimes we neglect. You just said my time's worth more. Right? People neglect how much their time is worth. Like it's invaluable sometimes. And we'll sit there and like, nope, I disagree. I'm going to send marketing's a big point for us. I'm going to send all those messages on marketing at 10 p.m. at night versus being in bed because I'm not going to pay someone $1,500 a month to do it. Okay, well, if that's your direction, some people, like you just said, I had a client, one of my first clients, he didn't have the money or the revenue or anything. He's like, but I know that I'm not going to want to pinhole myself into these responsibilities. All right. Because no one's going to sell my legal services, right? No one's going to get my client. In his case, no one's going to go to court, right?
Yeah, right.
And so, that's what landed us in the virtual staffing world because you have two type of people in the world, one who's looking for time and one who's looking for money to make more time. Right. And then there's those balances between, never a right or a wrong way to do it. But the worst thing you could always do is, I've seen people come, and not be able to afford it. And then they get their free time and they don't grow the business. Right. I've seen people do that. Like, oh man, I have this virtual assistant. I call them remote staff because virtual assistant is I don't think it's derogatory, but I think it understates their abilities sometimes. But he's had all this free time and then he never grew his business. And actually, the business got smaller. And I'm like, well, what are you doing with your time? Because I do offer consulting to some of my clients, and he was a guy like, listen, I'll do a free session. Let's chat. Let's think about how you're doing this strategic management style. And it turns out, instead of getting more clients, he was going to the beach, which is great. No worries. Go to the beach. I'm for it. Exercise more, play more volleyball. Great. However, when you start losing clients, or you're not gaining more clients, like, I just thought we were going to grow more. And I'm like, well, who was going to do that?
You got to do something.
What was going to happen? But we've seen them all. And what I love about individuals who have businesses is, I used to always want, give me people who want 5 virtual staff members. Give me people who want 10. I don't want those people. I want those $25,000, $30,000 a month deals, right? And then I realized the companies who hire those, oftentimes $25,000 isn't a whole lot for them, right? And so they'll spend it, and then you're just whatever, right, to them. We got into the individual small businesses because we were important. Like we were working with financial advisors and lawyers that $1,500 a month, that was their money that they were going to have.
Lot, and they're going to follow up and make sure it's valuable and working and all that.
Exactly. And they spend that money, and now it's important. And they do it because they're not just trying to I want my shareholders to have as much money as possible, right? They do it because I want to be at home, right? Or I want to feed my kids. I want to be able to pay for my health. And that's been 2.5 years ago, right? Salt to the earth. Now 80% of our businesses are one-person companies, right? With 1 to 2 virtual assistants. And I love it because I know that everyone we get to talk to is people like you, who I now get to, I thought was worth sharing those messages to the world. And I thought that people should hear what everyone's struggling to so we can normalize it, right? We should, it's I'm not the only one that's pulling out my hair, because I think every entrepreneur is going to have a moment where they're going to sit there and they're going to put their hands in their head in their hands. They're going to look at their desk and they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know.
It can be lonely too. I mean, you've got to make every decision when you go off solo practice like I did. And, there's networks to join and extracurriculars that I think are healthy to be a part of. But it's also really good for 'Cause I know the way that a financial advisor thinks about money. I don't know a way a non-financial advisor thinks about money. And so I
Mhm.
have to run a lot
That's a
of
good point.
my marketing ideas by my wife, who has, no offense, zero financial, the headspace. It just doesn't, she didn't go to school for that. And
Right.
so I'll say things to her. For example, I wrote a book last year called The Inheritance Playbook. And
Saw
um,
it.
I originally, when I was coming up with the name of the book, I thought, ooh, tax efficient inheritance. I loved that name so much. I went and bought the domain name for it. And and I just had this vision for, ooh, this is perfect, tax efficient inheritance. Um, and I tell my wife, I tell my parents about it, who are both CPAs, and they're like, yes, love it. That's great. We can't wait to read it. And I tell my wife about it. She goes, that's stupid. I don't know what that means. And I was like, well, I'm not writing this for CPAs or CFPs. I'm writing this for those that need help. And so we workshopped a lot of ideas like that, not just for the book, but for all my marketing and external messaging. I
I
really run
love
by
it.
her because she's of the general mindset of the mass population that I'm trying to talk to. And so it's valuable to bounce ideas off somebody, going back to where we were started. When you go off solo and you're by yourself, not only can it be lonely sometimes, but you can't bounce those ideas off. And you get into this one track mind of doing things. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, you have no idea why it didn't work, because you didn't run it by anyone else, because there's no one else to do that with.
Yeah. Uh, it is such a lonely position,
Yep.
and no one understands it. And I taught to my wife not to be condescending, and because she's lucky that with her restaurants, I'm always there for her. If she needs a decision to be made, I will make a decision. Right? I'm very clear. It will be a decision. It may not be the decision you wanted, but I'll make the decision. And this company, I've led other ones, and it's just like sometimes you're sitting there like, wow, I really wish I could look at somebody and be like, Chad, what do you want me to do? Right? Like, you tell me what you want me to do in this situation, and I'm going to do it. And you're that person. And so, Chad, very, very wonderful conversation. I'd love for this opportunity to actually open up to you. Tell me, we've touched on you as a person, but how do my people who are following us are going to get in contact with you when we share these clips and everything? What is it you do, and how do we contact you?
formulawealth.com is the best place to go. My book's currently available only on Amazon, but I've got the audiobook on Spotify and a few other places. But it's The Inheritance Playbook: Helping Your Parents Pass the Torch, Not the Tax. And that goes along with the group of people that I specialize in serving, which is folks with aging parents. So we've got, your 50s or 60s, and you've got parents that are in a nursing home or Alzheimer's or whatever it may be. The day for settling their estate is coming, whether you want it or not. Probate is nasty, and it's the process of settling the estate. There are taxes and fees that we can't even begin to fathom without researching this stuff. Until you go through it, you don't realize how complex it is and how much free time it takes away from you. Because it takes months and months, sometimes years, to settle someone's estate. Even a more simple one can be very difficult. And so the families I serve often have that specific problem, and I serve all my clients on a flat fee basis. So whether you are just by yourself or yourself and your parents, it's all the same fee. And as long as you've got power of attorney over your parents, I can consider you as one client. And kind of you can only serve one master. I can't serve both generations, because what I'm trying to do is maximize wealth for the bloodline. And what that may mean sometimes is the aging parents need to pay more in taxes now, right? Because if the only income they have is Social Security, and they've got this massive IRA, if you inherit that IRA and in your 50s and you have to pay taxes on it to touch it, you're in your highest bracket ever because you're towards the end of your career. Why don't we have your parents make advanced distributions from the IRA, pay taxes at 10 and 12%, 50 to 100 grand a year. Just pay 10 or 12% so that you're not inheriting it at 30 something percent. And so some tax rate arbitrage. So the multi-generational planning
That's great.
Current financial planning software does not allow for that. So it's really something that I have to step back and get into Excel, which is my favorite. Hence the name Formula Wealth. And so, just getting in there and really thinking about, okay, and we've got multiple siblings and everybody's in a different tax bracket. And, there's so many variables to consider with multi-generational planning that it's really a specialization that, in my opinion, should be everywhere, but you don't really see it that much. And so wealth management, tax planning, estate strategies, all that stuff kind of all married in together for one flat fee. I'm very transparent, so I'll say it. It's a flat $20,000 fee. I do require a $2 million minimum for assets to manage. And so therefore it's at 1% or less. You got, 20 million, that $20,000 is substantially lower than if you got 2 million. So I've got a variety of size of clients, some, ranging from even lower than my minimum, because I still have some from my early days when I started low, but up to like 30 million. So wide range, but we're all solving for that same minimizing taxes, minimizing probate, maximizing legacies is really what we're aiming to do. And check out my book, The Inheritance Playbook, on Amazon, or the inheritanceplaybook.com. You can check it out and get order. It'll take you right to Amazon from that link. And you can see there's free resources from the book there, checklists and flow charts and decision trees and things that you can that I mentioned in the book, but couldn't really fit inside the book itself. So.
Understand. Chad, I think that's a great model. Very transparent on my price. Never talk price. I always talk value. And so, folks, this is Chad Holmes from Formula Health. I'm your host, Cody Hall, from the Faces, Entrepreneurs Are People, as well as the CEO of Telehelping, a virtual staffing company. Thank you so much for listening in. If you enjoy talking to people like Chad and his amazing story, and the realness that we bring in as entrepreneurs and humans, please continue to follow us, hit that like button, and we'll be hearing more from wonderful people like Chad. Thank you again for so much for your time, Chad.
Thanks, Cody.
All right, be well.
This video was brought to you by our official sponsor, Telehelping. Need support for your business? Telehelping connects you with top-tier remote staff to help you streamline operations and fuel growth. Go to telehelping.com and get started today.